How deep is the crisis within the Fed when it comes to the issue of the ability to create inflation? It was something that central bankers always thought they could do. But for 5 years now, you've been missing your inflation target. Now it's going the other way. Are you rethinking the very basis, the models by which you think about how inflation is created?
So it's not a crisis at the Fed, but I think it's a debate. And I think I'm a business person, so I think a debate's a good thing. And I think that's also why it's good to have economists around the table and some business people around the table. And again, I think it's a conflict between what the models would tell you, i.e. the cyclical forces, and then some of these structural forces that are very powerful and new. The level of disruption, and when I say disruption, I mean, yeah, technology replacing people, but new business models replacing old business models, probably technology enabled. Pricing power of business is historically low. It's a new phenomenon, even more so than 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And my job as a central banker is to be open to learning. Yes, I look at the models, but I spend a lot of my time talking to business people and out in understanding what businesses are seeing. And so I'm trying to triangulate both those things, and I think that's a healthy process. And I think when there's a conflict, I think it pays to be patient.
You talk about people around the table, economists and business people. How do you feel about the possibility that the next Fed chair could be not an economist, but a business person?
So I'm not going to, as you know, I'm not going to comment on any specific individuals or changes, other than to say the great thing I've learned about the Fed, I've been around now 2 years at the Fed, it's a very resilient organization. It's designed for people around the table to change. We've had presidents change, we have governors change, we have chairpersons change. And if that were to happen, I'm quite confident that we'll work very effectively, we'll adapt to it. We've got a very strong process and methodology, and we're a very resilient organization. So I'm very confident about our ability to be effective.
So what about the chance, do you think Janet Yellen should be reappointed as Fed chair?
I'm not going to comment on that decision, other than to say I've been very impressed with Janet Yellen. I think she's a great economist. She's been an excellent leader. I think she's done a very good job. I find her very good to work with, great listener, great at mobilizing the group to make a decision. So I've been very impressed with Janet Yellen.
Let's turn now to some of the policies that are coming. When we spoke, I think it was in May, I asked you if you were baking in fiscal policy adjustments.
You've
and
been
I argued
asking me
with
all
you.
year.
I argued, so the IMF had done it. Why hadn't you done it? And you didn't do it.
Right.
And it seems like a pretty good bet.
So I've been giving you the same answer since January, which is, I'm not factoring in any of these proposed policies. I may, but here's why I'm not. And I've mentioned, you and I have talked about this before. Some of the policies will be positive for GDP. Regulatory review, I think, is positive. Potentially infrastructure spending. Tax reform, if it's actual reform as opposed to a deficit finance tax cut. And on the other side, I think some of the policies being discussed on immigration, potentially trade, could actually hurt GDP. I don't know which of these policies is going to be enacted, so I think the best approach is to wait for them to develop and actually be enacted, and then I'll factor them into my thinking. But my forecast for 2% plus growth for this year really doesn't make any assumptions about new policies being enacted.
When you talk about immigration, there's a bill the president has endorsed, the Cotton-Purdue bill, which would cut immigration in half. What kind of GDP effect would that have?
Well, I start with the backdrop. One of the big challenges we face in the United States, and one of the reasons why GDP growth has been so sluggish, is our population is aging and our workforce growth is slowing, okay? And participation rate was 66% in 07. It's 63% today. Our estimates at the Dallas Fed will dip below 61% in the next 10 years because of demographics. Also, there's a big skills gap in this country in that there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs that are open that employers can't fill. And everywhere I go, I hear about this. And so we need to grow the workforce if we're going to grow GDP. So I won't get into what type of scoring makes sense for immigration. I think some type of process certainly does make sense. But I want to emphasize that immigrants and their children have made up over half the workforce growth in this country over the last 20 years. They're likely to need to make up more than half in the next 20. And one of the key distinctive competencies of the United States is our ability to take in people, including my grandparents, assimilate them, make them productive members of society, And that's been one of the keys to the country, and I would be very loath to see us lose that distinctive competence.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.